Hey guys, so your assignment today is going to be to review some of the main points, the main formatting points about how to write a successful FRQ for AP Psych. So we talked about this at the very beginning of the year, really in depth. We did a whole lesson on how really you should be writing these FRQs and what is the style, right? So each FRQ, I keep hoping that we're going to get better and better, and I want to keep seeing that kind of progression towards following these rules a little bit more so that you're more and more apt to get a passing score on your AP exam. So I'm going to go over just the basic reminders because I know we haven't written an FRQ on a test in a while. You haven't done that in a couple of tests. So you will have it on your Unit 6 test. So let's go ahead and dive in and take a look at some of these reminders. So just a quick reminder, your test, of course, is the 28th if you're B day, the 29th if you are A day. This will be multiple choice questions and an FRQ. Like I said, I know you haven't done an FRQ in a while, so let's jump back in. Okay, so just a basic reminders about the style in which you are responding for AP Psych. So in English class and history class and most of your other classes, you are writing essays, right? This is not an essay. This is a free response question. Okay, so please make sure we understand the difference here. I saw a lot of you all who are still trying to write an intro. You're still trying to say, in conclusion, you don't need any of that. Time is of the essence. Remember that you have 25 minutes to write your FRQ. So you have no time to waste. You need to get in, get to the point, and move on. Okay. So I don't want to see any intros, no thesis statements. You don't need to know transitions, right? Next, I'm going to talk about, I saw so many people do that the last FRQ you all wrote. I know what you're about to talk about next. Okay. You don't need to tell me. Okay. And don't conclude anything. All right. Just get to the point and move on, okay? Please make sure you're writing complete sentences. I don't need to see bullet points, no dashes, just nice, complete sentences when you are writing. Okay, so if you remember my acronym SOTAs, just a quick review of that, because if you can remember SOTAs, these are all of your important stylistic reminders about how to write your FRQ. So S stands for space, right? You have to space out your answer. You should be leaving a few lines, 2 or 3 lines between each of your paragraphs. Now remember, for each of your bullet points on an answer, and we'll look at an example of those, let's say there's four bullet points, you're going to have 4 paragraphs. You need a little mini paragraph per bullet point, per term or per task that you are given, okay? So again, leave a couple of lines there between each of your mini paragraphs, okay? Your O stands for ordering your answers. You need to go in order. If your FRQ on your test is the first term is egocentrism, and then it moves on to theory of mind, and then it talks about pre-operational stage, answer them in that order, okay? You have to go in order. If you need to come back because you're having like a brain fog moment, that's fine, just leave space, but write your answers, your mini paragraphs in the same order that the questions are asked in your free response question, okay? Your D stands for define, right? So you need to, when you see a term, let's say egocentrism, your first task in your paragraph, your first sentence of your paragraph should be your definition of what the term is. Now, please listen carefully. The last FRQ that I graded for you all, it was beyond obvious. We wrote one for sensation and perception, which is very technical, very a lot of anatomy in there. And some of you all, for one of the questions about the cochlea, were using this vocabulary that we have never, ever once used, talking about parts of the ear we've never even talked about in class. Your book doesn't mention it, so you were clearly using outside resources. You obviously are not allowed to do that. So please make sure that when you are coming up with your definition, it's your own definition. It's not what the first search that came up in Google that you copy pasted, okay? That's not going to get you credit. And when I see things like that, you're not going to get points for your FRQ at all. That is plagiarism, automatic 0. You're saving me time because I'm going to stop reading, okay? So please make sure that you are defining a term. You're telling me what the term means in your own words, okay? Now, after you have defined the term that you've been tasked with, that's your first sentence of your paragraph, the second thing you're going to do, the most important thing that you have to do in order to score a point, is to apply the term to the scenario, right? You get a little blurb, a little scenario, some context above your bullet pointed terms. And you have to now, you told me what egocentrism is, right? It's the inability of children to take on other perspectives, right? And now you need to apply it to the scenario, right? So at school, Alex could demonstrate egocentrism by, right? So you have to apply it back, connect it back to the specific scenario I gave you. If you do not apply, if you do not connect that term to the specific scenario I gave you about Alex at school, about the cheerleaders at East Mech, about the kids at the pizza shop, whatever the case may be, then you cannot score. You have to show that not only can you define it, but you understand how to apply and connect that term to the given scenario, okay? And your last S here is synonyms, okay? So I think the classic example of this is independent variable. You are clearly showing me if you define independent variable as a variable that's independent, you don't know what the heck you're talking about, okay? You tried to finagle it. No, okay? Use alternate terms that mean the same thing. Use synonyms that mean the same thing, and sometimes that can get you some points there. Okay, so if we were to take a look at this example prompt, you could see your scenario here that you're going to apply all of your terms to, given the specific information, which is why you have to read the prompt really carefully. But take a look at how many paragraphs would you need in your answer in order to score on this prompt, okay? How many paragraphs would you be required to have for this specific prompt? Now, this is a super short prompt, but how many bullet points would you, how many paragraphs would you need? Okay, so we're gonna go through a practice scenario and FRQ question. Okay, so let's take a quick look at this now. I'll pause for you guys and take a quick look here. Let's read through the question. Caleb, age 6, is outgoing and enthusiastic about school and enjoys having playdates with his friends. He was invited to a friend's house for a slumber party. The day of the party, his parents reminded him to clean his room, and while he was doing that, he thought to pack his toothbrush and favorite stuffed animal. That night, he had fun with his friends, in spite of being a little homesick. His parents called him the next morning to tell him how proud they were of him, and he was happy to see them when they picked him up. All right, so that's Caleb's scenario. Keep in mind the characteristics of Caleb and how he did at the slumber party. Now let's look at Jaden. So Jaden also is invited to the same slumber party. But after his parents dropped him off at the slumber party, Jaden was immediately anxious and did not talk to many of his classmates at the party. When it came time to pick teams to play kickball, he was picked last. Aww. Jaden felt left out and embarrassed and called his parents to come pick him up even before the birthday cake was served. Okay, so think about the differences here. Think about the time that they had at the party, their different experiences. Okay, so this is the scenario you're given, and then let's take a look at your task. Okay, so your task for this FRQ is explain how the following played a role in the successful experience that Caleb had at the slumber party. Okay, now you have two terms to apply here, so you would have two paragraphs for this part of the question. Now, don't forget that sometimes your prompt will have a two-part question to it, okay? So this is asking about how these terms, parenting styles and initiative versus guilt, which we know is one of Erik Erikson's stages that we looked at last class, how is that going to play a role in how successful of an experience that Caleb had, okay? Now, your second part to your question is explaining how each of these terms, attachment and industry versus inferiority, again, one of Erikson's stages, played a role in the slumber party being an unsuccessful experience for Jaden, okay? Now, let's take a look at this very first response. Now, we're going in order because our O of SOTUS tells us to go in order. And this is addressing parenting styles, okay? So if you take a look here, we start off by addressing the term, right? We're talking about parenting styles. That was the term that you were given, right? So I define what parenting styles are, right? And specifically, what type of parenting style would aid in the successful outcome of his experience at the slumber party, right? So because he has authoritative parents, and then I define what that means, high levels of warmth and sensitivity, right? If you think back to that chart we looked at with Baumann's parenting styles, that sets him up to be having that successful experience at the slumber party, right? They call him. That shows how sensitive and how caring they are and how proud they were of him, right? And again, I'm explaining a little bit further here how authoritative parenting styles are being demonstrated with Caleb, right? So Caleb stayed the whole night and had fun with his friends, confident that he could get past feeling homesick. Okay. So again, applying back to the parenting style that I've just described. I addressed the term parenting styles. I described what they were. I gave a definition, right? And now I'm going to apply it back to Caleb's experience at the slumber party, right? So we all know that authoritative parenting style can lead to the most socially well-adjusted and confident kids, right? So, which leads to his successful outcome, and he had a good time with his friends, all because of that authoritative parenting style. All right, let's take a look at this next prompt, right? The next paragraph. So we're addressing initiative versus guilt, right? So I'm telling you that that is the third of Erik Erikson's psychosocial developmental stages, right? And then I tell you what's going on in that stage. I provide a definition of what exactly is this conflict of initiative versus guilt, okay? And remember, Caleb had a successful experience, right? So we're keeping in mind that we want to connect initiative versus guilt to this successful experience, right? So it appears that Caleb has developed initiative during that stage because he is able to plan for his slumber party. He can make plans by packing his toothbrush and favorite stuffed animal, right? So again, connecting it back, he had a good time, so he had to prepare himself. He took the initiative, right? He started doing these things on his own, right? And again, kind of connecting it back, specifically connecting it back to the scenario that I gave you, okay, and a successful outcome. All right, so take a look at these next two examples, your next two paragraphs, the last two terms, and how our next kid, Jaden, had the unsuccessful experience, right? And you're going to apply attachment and you're going to apply the industry versus inferiority, okay? So take a look at these two responses, and then you're going to tell me why these answers would in fact score. Alrighty, so now you all are going to practice a little bit on your own. So here's your practice scenario. 18-year-old Max is making a holiday meal this year for his three sisters and himself because their parents will be out of town. He is trying to cook the special dishes his mother makes each year, but with his own unique style. Okay, so again, you have a two-part scenario here. Explain how each of the following could help Max in making the meal, and then you're going to apply theory of mind. And then explain how each of the following could hinder Max in making the meal, right? And you're going to apply gender roles. So go ahead and practice that. Don't forget, in order to score for these, you need to use SOTA's format to apply your theory of mind and your gender roles.